Welcome, everyone, to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, The Dance of the Critic and the Muse, the 7-step initiation into the voice and vision of your soul. I'm Lisa Bonis, and I'm really looking forward to hosting this Q&A conversation for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of Shiloh Sophia and address questions about her upcoming 7-week course, The Dance of the Critic and the Muse, which begins Thursday, February 14th. Later, I'll explain how you can participate in this course even if you can't attend the live sessions. But first, I want to introduce our guest. Shiloh Sophia is a Renaissance woman who, for 25 years, has dedicated her soul work to the study and practice of creativity as a path of healing that provides access to consciousness. Her method of creating with mindfulness has reached tens of thousands of students who've gained insights into the hidden self. Her work is taught widely at the university level in MA and PhD programs, the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, and by over 250 certified intentional creativity teachers in over 13 countries worldwide. She's the creator of 7 books, including Tea with the Midnight Muse. And in just a few moments, we're going to open up for your questions. But first, I want to welcome Shiloh, who will begin our call with a poem. Welcome, Shiloh. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you so much. I am truly honored to be with you as well, and with all of you who are joining us. Thank you for tuning in. One of the ways that the Muse gets inspired is by doing something a little uncommon, like dancing or music or poetry. So I decided on this poem, and it's called A People Who Believe. So I invite you to just sit back and enjoy its story time. There are days when it seems life is too big for us, and no matter what we can dream up or change we commit to making, it won't make the difference to what we actually need. As it turns out, it is not the change itself we are in need of, although the critic will always point a crooked finger to that. What we are in need of is being a people who believe, a people who believe that change is possible even in the face of the impossible, and the ability to act from that faith instead of acting from our despair. We are destined to rise and fail and rise again, to love and to hurt and to love again, to win and lose and win again, to create and destroy and create again. It's just like that here on earth, but I like it here. I like this mystery, this provocative, buoyant bliss of existence. As long as the poets can write about it, and the singers can chant about it, and the painters can paint about it, and the dancers can move about it, and the gardeners can plant about it, and the speakers can talk about it, and the lovers can make love about it, and the dying can praise it, and the living can dance it, then the world will continue to turn round, and grace will dance with tragedy like grace has always done. What we, the lovers of life, must do is express ourselves and live out our passions, express our voices, our images. It is our very substance that keeps the world from flying apart. From Tea with the Midnight Muse.
Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Shiloh.
My pleasure.
So now we have the rest of our, what's that?
My pleasure.
And mine too. Everyone's pleasure. Thank you. Now we have the rest of our time together to dive into our viewers' questions for Shiloh as we prepare for her upcoming course. Again, that's called The Dance of the Critic and the Muse, and it begins Thursday, February 14th. Thursday, February 14th. If you want to check out the website and learn more about the 7-week course, you can visit danceofcriticandmuse.com. You'll see it down there on the bottom of your screen, and that's where you'll see the full description, and that's where you can register if you'd like. So let's go ahead and get started with questions. If you have a question for Shiloh, go ahead and type them in, and I'll be happy to read them aloud. In the meantime, we've already got a few questions submitted, so let's start there. Let's start with, I think this is a great way to start. Abby wants to know, What would be your best advice to someone who's just starting their journey? Where's the best place to start?
Hmm. The best place to start, I believe, is following excitement. And this is both subtle and obvious. And by excitement, I mean noticing what calls to you in your life as you walk through the world. What color inspires you? What song moves you? What conversation causes you to look more deeply? When we're just getting started, one of the ways that we get access to creativity and to a more expanded sense of sensation, literally how you feel, is through beauty and through the central experience of human being. That noticing alone could instantly begin to change how we look at the world and how we feel in our bodies. And specifically with creativity, I would say noticing the beauty and then doing something about it. Taking a photo of it, writing a little poem about it, seeing what language comes to you, drawing, to take it further than just appreciation, but to somehow share it with yourself or others. And it's always time to begin the journey of self expression, I feel.
All right, great suggestions. Thank you. Then let's go to the absolute flip side of that. This is a question from Kat, who's been doing this a while. But Kat says, what if a person has blocked themselves for more than a decade? Is there a way back?
Mhm. Let me just say that you are so not alone. What's so amazing about this work is to discover that we're all dealing with it at different levels at different times. And most of the people that I work with have the experience of having been blocked for most of our life until we really consciously engage in the act of exploring and transforming how the critic functions. Then we really are blocked for a really long time. And so this is why we're doing this class. Exactly why. Because as soon as you begin to engage in creativity, how the critic has been functioning and how the block has been preventing you from really knowing what you think and feel and what you want to create in your life, it begins to change and dissolve. And it's pretty instant how, as soon as we begin creating, things begin to move. So I would say not to worry about how long it's been, to just say yes to your own adventure, either this or another one where you're living out this creativity. This is not a concept. We can't think about changing the critic. We have to do something in the physical sense in order for that to begin to move. So I really just dare you and encourage you to get a sketchbook, get a coloring book, sing a song, to just start to start that change of how the block has been living. But not just thinking about it, do something, maybe right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've got a question here from Emily who says, what does metacognitive drawing mean?
So, metacognition is a concept that means thinking about thinking or knowing about knowing, a kind of conscious observer position. So, in metacognitive drawing, for example, we're moving a pen while we're posing an inquiry or thinking about something. So, what ends up happening is that how your brain delivers information to you is different when you're moving a pen. You get access to whole regions of consciousness that aren't available through thinking alone. So all it is really thinking with a pen because you get different insights.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We're getting a couple different people asking a similar question. I'll read Brandon's version. Brandon says, how do you maintain positivity despite the world and its current state of events? I want to write and create my own music, but I have a difficult time finishing anything I start. And Barbara's asking a similar question. How do you stay positive and attached to your muse when there's so much going on?
This is such a potent question and one that I ask myself on a regular basis, especially right now with the level of transition and even suffering that we're dealing with in the world. I would say this is the tool of resiliency. This is the immediate access to state change. like when you are playing music, how the world can go away for a little while. You spend time in that creative space, that creates resiliency. And what I say is that I create so that I don't have to turn from suffering, so that I don't have to shut myself off from the world. Creating gives me the courage, the strength, and the fortitude to go ahead and be the activist that I really am. But first, like on the airplane, you put your own mask on first. Creativity is the way we strengthen ourselves so that we can. And then there's this belief that your music, your art, whatever your message is part of the antidote to what's happening in the world. And when we treat ourselves as if we have the medicine, as if we are the antidote to what's going on, it brings a personal relevancy, which is the other thing I would say. I learned that from my mom, Karen, that we don't treat ourselves and our art as relevant enough. And when you see yourself as essential to the great unfolding, you can't not do your work anymore. And I know it's a temptation to say, well, there's so many things happening. There's so much going on. I should be doing something more useful than my hobby or the thing I love the most. But I want to be a stand for all of those who feel a call to creativity, that we need you. Think where we would be without the artists, without the music, without the dance, without the cultures and traditions of all of our ancestors. If they were just too busy doing what they were doing to create that art, we wouldn't even know who we were as a people at this time. So you artists are essential to creating the future that is sustainable for all of us. So go forth and create.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. It almost feels like some of the people are feeling like they aren't true artists unless they're making a living at it, unless they're like fabulously successful as an artist, as opposed to just a hobbyist. Can you address that?
Absolutely. This is our specialty, because we are in our community of intentional creativity. Our focus is to create art with intention, which is basically with mindfulness about what you're creating, having nothing to do with anyone else seeing it, unless that's what you choose, having nothing to do with quality. I want to separate talent from creativity right now. We are all creative. We are not all talented at painting, writing, dancing. We aren't necessarily skilled. We don't know how it all works. I'm talking about a kind of creativity that has nothing to do with talent or being good or selling it or being acknowledged for it. This collapse of talent and creativity has been, I consider, a kind of a tragedy for our people, because children are encouraged to draw up to a certain point and to dance and make sounds and sing. And then at a certain point, it's deemed that they aren't going to be good at that or can't make a living at that. Therefore, they should stop that and do something more reasonable, like start studying to become a lawyer or a doctor or some other worthy profession. What we don't realize when we do that to the children and to ourselves is that we're cutting off the voice of the soul. Creativity is what gives us access to who we are inside. And that doesn't have anything to do with how good it looks or if someone loves it or wants to buy it. This is totally independent. It's almost like a different category.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I assume that was helpful for all of those people who were having that question. Thank you. Well, let's go for a question here with it. A lot of people are asking about this as well, about the critic specifically. Like, for example, Greta is saying, is the critic all bad? I've struggled with the critic all my life. It's like a bully.
Yes, it is a bully and a hitchhiker in our consciousness as it occurs for us now. My view of how the critic functions may be unlike anything that you've read about how to work with it, because I don't recommend cutting off or silencing the critic. My work is about the transformation of how the critic functions and how that voice has been operating hardwired into how we live, into our body and brain and our view of ourselves. And so, no, the critic isn't all bad at all. And we won't be spending a lot of time in our class bashing the critic, because that exacerbates, I'm not even sure that's a word right now, that makes it worse. So through transformation of the voice of the critic and how it functions with creativity, it begins to change and can be returned to its original function, which has more to do with protection and discernment and self-awareness. But left unchecked, goes completely out of control. And then we begin to believe that that voice, which we are hearing, is our voice. But it is our voice, but the critic has taken it over and has been bullying that pathway. That is why creativity comes in to begin to change how information actually travels down that pathway to your conscious awareness. So we're really repurposing the function of the critic into a voice of fierce wisdom, which is one of the things that we cover in the class. And I know that this is possible. We've worked with it with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to change the relationship. And that is my invitation for all of you, whether you're joining us for the class or not, that you begin to change your relationship with how you've been thinking about the critic to really understand it is an essential part of you that has been allowed to flourish. And now we are inviting it to a dance to begin to change how it works. And part of how to begin to do this, you all, is by learning to recognize the voice and what it's saying before it really gets its hooks into you. You feel that familiar feeling like, wow, why are you even doing that? Or, oh, why do you think you're going to do a drawing class? Or, why are you so unlovable? Or whatever it is. Right when the critic starts to ask that first question, you recognize it, and it's almost like in your consciousness, you're turning towards it and being like, oh yeah? What have you got to say? As soon as you do that, it starts to change. But then we need to give it something to do, something new to do, and something that's exciting and sensual, which is why creativity is what we give the voice. Why we give the voice creativity is so that it starts to be repurposed. You can't just think the critic out of existence. If that worked, we would have done it already. But we're still struggling with it as a culture. And that's why we believe this is a revolution. And this class almost has, it's creativity is the thing that we're using to get access to the voice of the soul. So it's not just for artists. It's not even really about creativity. Creativity is what we use to listen to what the hidden self has to say to us, which we can't hear because the critic has been so loud.
Right. That makes so much sense. Thank you for that. We got a question here from Michelle on Facebook. She's referring to the conversation you had with Stephen Dine in your intro call. She says, can you repeat some of the stuff about seeing our thoughts as material outside of our body? The stuff from the webinar was mind-blowing, but I have a poor memory. So can you maybe go through that again?
So once again, say it again, Lisa.
The stuff about seeing your thoughts as material outside of our body.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure I got it right. So one of the tools that we use is a visionary screen, like what you're watching now with your phone or your computer. And we begin to create this screen as a place to work. Now, you are continually using this way of seeing, but you don't know that you are. Hence the intention and consciousness aspect of this work. So those of you who are out there right now, you can just take your hands and you can just create a screen in front of you and just say, this is my space of being visionary. I'm able to project my imagination to this place so I can become an observer of this place, a place to create. And what we're doing is we're giving license to the imagination to show us something that is not just inside of the body. So for example, when you think of your imagination, where do you think of it? Interestingly enough, most people just go to the brain. We have a lot of default settings about where imagination lives. Well, imagination, not unlike consciousness, which is imagination is a part of consciousness, is non-local, meaning it doesn't just reside in the body. Memories don't just reside in the body, they are all around you. So if we know that information and story and image and memory and history is all around us, why don't we ask it to reveal itself to us right here where we can take a look. And so that's something that you can begin to do. You can say, hey, I'm really working with this topic, or I really love some information about this. I can't seem to get clarity. And you just imagine it on the screen and you watch it. And you watch it and it begins to move and change for a lot of us. Not everyone. If people aren't visual seers, they may use auditory or physical sensation. But when you begin to draw, you create a practice of being able to see something out here. So the page is a duplication of this idea of your imagination being someplace you can watch. In shamanic traditions, this is part of what we do when we journey, right? We're looking at this sort of other world, but we're saying, does it have to be so other? Do we have to be in the dream space or non-ordinary reality? Can we see it with our eyes open right now because we ask? It does take some practice, but once you begin to work with it, the insight that we get about our own information and story becomes much more accessible, which is why I'm so devoted to this work, is because I'm seeing that we do not have access to our own information. We don't have access to our truest, clearest voice. And I'm concerned about that because I'm into a revolution where people are awakened and want to express their messaging out into the world. But if we don't know what that is, how will we even know how to be and act and what revolution to cause or join? So I hope that that's helpful. And I just use my hands as the reference point to activate it. It's like I'm in Star Wars and I'm just turning on the screen so that I can begin to work with it. The other amazing thing is that that place of imagination has always been operating. You may not have been looking at it because the critic overrides that easeful visionary seeing through language, through the left brain. When we start to get a little ground on the way the critic works, this other world of seeing and hearing comes into more availability for us. But what I want to say is that that imagination, that place within you that is so fascinating and endless and gorgeous, has been there the whole time. So when you start to create, it's as if you see it and know that it has always been working on your behalf. You have always been using your imagination. You might not have called it that. You might not have been able to access it on command, but it has always been there. So there's a kind of a healing that happens when we start to realize how visionary all of our imaginations truly is and has been for us.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that leads rather well into a question here from Cheryl, who says, "Can you comment about an inner dream figure of mine, a witch, which my intuition says is my repressed muse? How do you befriend such a dream character?"
So there are many archetypes and dream characters that will appear from either our subconscious or unconscious or the collective. And for me, it would begin with a dialogue with that figure, hopefully in a waking state. So you might get a piece of paper and say, "Oh, thank you for appearing. I see you have some information for me. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?" And then you begin to write from the perspective of the other voice and see what gets revealed. And I would say that we always do this too with discernment, that within your own faith and spiritual tradition and however you set up your boundaries, that before you begin to engage in a dialogue with any kind of archetypal presence, inner, outer, or otherwise, that you practice a little bit of discernment first. But if it doesn't feel scary and it feels very familiar and like it's a helpful character, then engage in a dialogue and give them a chance to speak to you.
Okay, great. Let's take a question here from Carol. Again, this is sort of a commonly asked question. We'll read Carol's version. She just wants to know, what is your personal path to being in relationship with Muse and taming your inner critic? Did you ever reach a crisis point or an epiphany?
Absolutely. That's why I'm here. I went to art school and I was not very good at it. And I remember this moment of feeling like, I'd done all the assignments and I felt like there was nothing left to draw. Like I drew the building, I drew the this, I drew the still life, I did all the stuff. And I just was feeling more and more deadened actually, and not very good at it either. And so my crisis was that moment of sitting on my floor in my studio in San Francisco saying, there's really nothing left to draw. And something about the desperation of that moment opened something. So sometimes when we're on the floor, that opening comes. And I knew that there was something else, but I didn't know how to get there, which is really interesting because I was raised by a poet and a painter. They also didn't know how to tell me the information that I was looking for was within me. And I can't even believe that we don't know that now. And I know that most of us don't know that because when I work with my students, they don't know that either. The information is held within us that we're looking for. And so that was my crisis. And I quit art school. I moved to a mountaintop with my teacher. And I said, I am here to learn about creating. It would be several months of extreme struggle before I would do a drawing that came from within. But once I did, I knew this was it. It was as if this couple months, or really almost a lifetime of crisis around knowing I'm an artist but not being good at art. That's kind of an ongoing crisis for a lot of people who feel like they're an artist, but the results are not showing out in the world and they're not getting affirmed for it. So when I did this drawing, I feel like, and this is kind of a big thing, but I feel like I came into myself as if I dropped in, as if the whole rest of my consciousness arrived. And it was so incredible that I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to do it again. And so I did another drawing, and then I did another drawing. And within a year, I had produced my first book at 24, which is called Color of Woman. And that book still exists today. And it has those first drawings where I felt like there's me. Why? Why was that? Why did I feel like that? The reason why I felt like that is because I had access to my interior imagery, to my interior language. I could hear my own voice. Draw this line over here. What do you think this is? Oh, how about that? Draw a line over here. What does this mean? What is the story? How about this symbol? And I was like, who is that? That was me. And so I got the opportunity to connect with that voice early. But I think often about, I almost missed it. I had quit art school. Now I was going to quit being an artist because I wasn't getting the results I wanted. And I was so frustrated. Once I got it, that the images were inside, I felt my purpose in life was awakened, and I felt that I was going to spend my life sharing this. And at the time, I didn't know what this was. I didn't know what I would be sharing. And now, some 25 plus years later, I understand that the key to my work is gaining access to the inner world, so that people can know what they think, feel, and want to create in their lives. So absolutely crisis and absolutely breakthrough. And now I can tell people, in a call like this, what took me years and years of struggle to discover. The blessings are within.
Nice. Thank you. Wow. Well, if you're just joining us, we're here with Shiloh Sophia, learning about her upcoming course, The Dance of the Critic and the Muse, which begins Thursday, February 14th. And you can log on to danceofcriticandmuse.com for all the details and register. So let's go to a question that sort of touches on what you were just talking about. Karen says, when going through a crisis in my life, I used to write questions with my left hand, I'm left-handed, then answer with my right hand. Do you think this is similar to what you're discussing?
Absolutely, as a feature, because anything we can do to get us off of a default setting, and by default setting, I mean the pattern and how we normally think and operate. So by doing that, you're just moving a little bit off of the default setting to give you access to other information. And also what's happening is you're working on that bilateral both sides. And so that's something that we're definitely working with in the class. We're working with both hands, and both hands activates both sides of the brain. And when we do that really consciously, we get different information. And that is, it's physical. If you just think about the left and the right, there's not a lot that goes on, but there's a physicality to using both. I love that you did that. That's such a great exercise.
Okay, thank you. We've actually got quite a few people here too, also asking about what sort of medium will you be talking about in the class? Will you be teaching acrylic painting technique as well as spiritual awakening? What sort of painting will we actually be talking about in the course?
We won't be painting this time, although I am a painter. We wanted to create a bridge between our community of intentional creativity and the Shift Network through pen and paper. Painting is a big stretch, and so we thought, what can we share with you that is accessible through pen and paper? So all you have to do is make a trip to the office supply store. So this class is not painting, this is pen and paper to make it extremely accessible and to articulate the concepts around what I really mean by Critic and the Muse, which, just to give you a little clue, it's really just talking about you, and they are different aspects of talking about you. And while we move the pen on the paper, you begin to receive insight about you that isn't available just through thinking without some kind of embodiment.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Again, we've got many people asking specifically about how participating in this course might help them to heal through depression and grievance. And for example, Sherry is saying, I lost my father a year ago, and I've really been grieving, and it's been the hardest experience I've ever had to endure. How can doing this kind of work actually help somebody go through a grieving or a healing or a depression, that type of thing?
Thank you. Well, first, let me say I'm sorry for your loss and for all of you who are experiencing loss at this time. It's something we're all going to go through, and I've gone through a couple losses that felt impossible to live through. And I used creativity like medication. And I would throw myself at the page or at the canvas with all the passion, all the grief, all the tears that I had. I wouldn't let myself be held back. It was a place where I could bring all of the emotion and let it be expressed and moved in some way into form through dance, paper, canvas, really any medium. I want to just say that I think sometimes like beading and gardening are creative too, but it's hard to kind of like really get it out. It's just a different medium. So with grief, I had thought that I would move through it more quickly by creating. I don't think I moved through it more quickly, but what was different for me and might be for you is that I didn't lose myself in the process. The grieving was intense, but I've kept checking with myself, oh, I'm still here. I am not going somewhere where I can't find myself. And in working with people with grief, I hear a lot that sometimes years can go by where they don't feel like who they are. So there's a sense of creativity that allows you to stay connected to your emotion, present, able to function. It is a tool, creativity is a tool of resilience. Also, I would say it's a break from the barrage of suffering that we sometimes feel. Sometimes when people are struggling with depression and trauma and grief, 1 minute of relief, 30 seconds of taking your eye off of the thing that hurts and focusing on something else provides an entire relief to your body system. The research shows that in 5 to 7 minutes that our state can change through drawing. And I don't know about all of you, but when I have felt that impossible feeling, 5 minutes of something else was what I really needed. And in working with youth and people with on suicide watch and all these things, drawing is what I give them to do. Let's move this energy. The other thing I would say is that coloring specifically has been proven not only to increase learning, but can also break a loop. Literally, someone in a psychotic loop, if they can get them to start drawing and coloring, they have a potential for breaking that pattern. That's how powerful working with the pen and with color can be to changing where we're stuck. And part of, grief is natural. What becomes unnatural for us is when we get stuck in it and can't seem to see beyond the horizon. So drawing and writing and engaging with the voice of the soul sometimes is just 30 seconds of relief, but also could be hours of relief. We did a survey not long ago with 500 people in our community and asked a question about emotional and chronic pain. What percentage of you were able to have a relief from physical chronic pain or emotional pain while creating? And over 80% of the people said they were able to experience a relief. And I'm into a little bit of relief for us so that we can break the constant pattern that sometimes depression and anxiety doesn't give us relief from. So I would say it's relief, it's resiliency. Does it heal everything? Not necessarily. Does it help us navigate the rough terrain? Absolutely.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. We've got a question here from Calix who says, is it possible to embody or paint the critic to allow it to transform to become an ally instead?
Absolutely. And if you are a painter, I cannot recommend that enough, to bring the energy of that critic and how you experience that in your body to the page or to the canvas, and then not to leave it there. If you're a painter, I would suggest first putting that on there and then doing a heavy glaze of color and spray, and then bringing an alternate energy, almost like the medicine, over the top of that. And it doesn't submerge it, but it does integrate it. And from a drawing perspective, one of the things that we do in the Dance of the Critic and the Muse is we draw the energy of the critic, and then we draw the energy of the muse. And through that, there's a kind of resolving of the paradox. The thing about identifying and really listening and working with the embodied and visual energy of the critic is super powerful, because it's operating all the time without us noticing or with it going unchecked. And so by getting it conscious, it is an invitation to begin to transform it. As long as it's unconscious and unchecked, then it's running the show. It doesn't have to be. For all of you, this could be changing right in this moment as we are here together dialoguing about this. I invite you to just gently turn toward the critic. What do you do when you say, okay, I'm turning toward the critic? And you say, I see you. I hear you. Thank you for what you've provided. I recognize the energy that you've been bringing, and I'm really ready for a change. And even if you don't want that, I do. And it's happening right now. From now on, I'm going to be observing you, and I'm going to know voice when you emerge. And I want to learn to make a distinction between truth and lies, because I want to hear my truest voice. This change begins now, and I am willing to do whatever work it takes to gain access and transform the criticism into discernment so that my creativity can soar to new heights. This is all happening right now, physically, mentally, emotionally, and in the energetic domain. We're now on the path.
Okay, thank you. That sort of leads into Zara has a question that sort of relates to that. She's talking about making friends with the critic. Is that what you're talking about here? Making friends with, or just learning to cohabit?
So ultimately, the critic is not separate from you. We're talking about your voice. The critic and the muse is language that we use to talk about left brain, right brain, or the linear world and the creative swirly flow world. So it isn't an external entity. It is an ally in that it can become alchemized. But once we get through the course, it's almost like the critic and the muse dissolve and it's just your truest voice. That's the whole hope of the course, is that you will be initiated into the voice and vision of your soul. And so, yes, there's an energy of friendliness towards it, but I feel there can be some challenge with continuing to think of it as some sort of external thing that we are dealing with. But that does take a little bit of time. And absolutely turning towards it with friendliness and making it an ally, 100%. But I think we can also keep that going longer than we need to, because does the relationship with the critic need to continue as it is now? Once you've identified an oppressor, for example, do you continue to say, hey, oppressor, I see you there, we're making friends, hey, oppressor? No, you want that oppressor to be changed into a support system. So there's a way that we disenfranchise the authorship of the critic, how it's been functioning. And all we're really after here is a clear voice and vision, which is your own, that the critic energy and behavior and brain pathways have been blocking.
Okay, thank you. Very helpful. Looking at the clock here, we have time for a few more questions, but before we take those, I want to give a few details about the course itself. People are asking questions. Once again, it's called The Dance of the Critic and the Muse. And this is going to be a really powerful, life-changing 7-week journey under Shiloh's expert guidance, where you'll experience proven hands-on practices to tame your inner critic, open to joy of authentic self-expression, and to invite your muse to dance with you. The 7-week course takes place on Thursdays at noon Pacific, starting Thursday, February 14th. And if you can't join us live, that's fine. You will not miss the teachings. You will receive audio and video recordings, transcripts, and all course handouts on your course homepage. And also, I'd like to remind you that the Shift Network offers a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks until February 28th in this case to make sure that you absolutely love it. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect in a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. Also, everyone who registers receives the Dance of the Critic and the Muse bonus collection. First, you'll receive a video painting class from Shiloh Sophia entitled Messages from the Muse. Then you'll get another video class from Shiloh called Colorful Scars. And next, you'll receive a video dialogue with Shiloh and Chief Louisa Teach entitled Creativity and Healing. And when you register by midnight Pacific on Thursday, February 7th, you'll receive an additional bonus gift, and that is a video dialogue with Shiloh and Flora Bowley entitled Brave. So before we go any further, Shiloh, what are you most looking forward to sharing in your upcoming course?
Thank you. Good question. I just want to make one point first that we do have the calls, right? That we are having the live calls that you can participate in or get the recording. But the content of the course is delivered via pre-recorded video right here in my own studio that you can do at your own pace. So the majority of the content, 10 plus hours of video, is available for you to do at any time. So don't be concerned at all about not being able to make those more interactive experiential calls. The content is in the videos, and I know that's a little bit of a shift from the way that Shift usually does it. It also means that there is double plus what the normal amount of content that you would receive is, because this is experiential and it's a practice. So what I'm excited about the most is I know that this works, and my life assignment, really what I call my sacred assignment, is to communicate the power of intentional creativity to the world and to as many people as I possibly can that you are creative, having nothing to do with talent, and that creativity is what gives you access to your own consciousness and your own genius. Creativity is what brings bliss, sensuality, and pleasure, and keeps us from letting the fear and the old stories prevent us from creating the life that we really want to live. When creativity is involved, it's really a creative lifestyle starts to emerge, and we don't have the same constraints that we used to. We actually really care a lot less what anyone else thinks of us, including our critic, because there's a sense of freedom. So what I'm thrilled about is knowing that those who join us will become self-expressed in a way that they never have before, and that it really dovetails with any work that people are doing in the world. We have a lot of healers and shamans and practitioners and therapists and helping and healing professionals who work with creativity so that they can bring the gifts of creativity to their life and to their clients. We also have a lot of families. We have so many different families, from teens to grandmas, who do this work, whose homes really change into a creative environment. So the invitation to be self-expressed, to choose a freedom-based, self-expressed lifestyle, and to have the chance to offer that to you, yeah, that's what I'm all about. When I do this work, I just get so lit up from within, and I feel the joy that really helps me navigate the challenges that we're facing in our unfolding world.
Well, that's beautifully stated. Thank you. I think a lot of people would really love to be able to tap into that same thing. In fact, we've got a question here from Dawn who says, what happens when you stand back from the canvas and feel like nothing but the critic has shown up? How can she tap into what you were just talking about?
Mm-hmm. Well, my first question would be, when you're creating, are you referencing an external image that you're comparing what you have on the canvas to? In that case, what we understand of as the critic will always say a little to the left, a little to the right, doesn't look like that. And over time, that voice becomes a voice of discernment, like, how about some shading over here? Or this might look better over there. So instead of giving you heck about it, it really provides a perspective. But in terms of in the moment, when the critic is speaking to you, when you're creating, if you are drawing from within and the critic is talking to you, this is the same thing where it's as if you're gently turning toward the critic. You become kind of the observer, and you say, I'm working on this right now, and I appreciate your support, but I'm really moving over here, and I'm going to go pick a color that I love. This is almost like when the child hurts themselves, and before you know if they're actually hurt, you don't scream out. You wait and see if they're okay. And if they're okay, then you don't make a big deal out of it, right? It's almost like if you made a big deal out of it, then the child would start crying no matter what. There's this distraction. So what I do in that moment is I go and I pick a juicy color. I let the muse choose. I invite the muse to come, and I bring some movement, some big strokes or some big colors. And so I just redirect the focus. Thank you very much for showing up. I'm actually working over here. And this is a lot where pleasure comes in, and we'll deal with pleasure and some of the later modules of the course, how much we're blocking pleasure because of the critic. And then instead of just sort of, digging our way through the painting or the drawing process, we've invited the muse to tea to start to change how that happens. And ultimately, you don't let the critic stop you. You don't listen to the BS. You continue on, and you let yourself move into flow state through movement and through color from a painting perspective.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to a question here from Michelle. You were talking earlier about poetry and painting, and Michelle wants to know, I'm teaching a poetry class in March. Can cognitive drawing be used for poetry writers?
Absolutely, because one of the things that happens with writing poetry is that people feel blocked. With any kind of writing, people feel blocked. And there's been all these incredible studies with children showing that when they draw before they listen, their retention and understanding is higher. So if you were going to be leading a creative process of poetry, you could have them start with drawing, and I would certainly suggest no lined paper for anybody in the writing process. You could also have them work with some words, like big words, like fill the page. So you might do a drawing and then a whole bunch of big words and then go into the writing process, because the right brain has been opened up. And with writing, the left brain sometimes takes control. And what we want to do is activate this right brain idea first. It doesn't work like that exactly from a neuroscientific perspective, but it's enough to say, I want to move into the right brain before I go into the literal and language. And so, yes, absolutely. All of you who are teachers and who work with others, working with drawing can be extremely helpful to get us loosened up and expanded before we go into the more intellectual rigor of language.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question here from Linda. It's a little lengthy, so give me a second to read it out. Linda says, I'm 71. I've done inner work through meditation, writing, and painting, and she's using the term loosely, she says. I got to a place where I thought I had healed from a long marriage to a controlling, judgmental man. But often when I hear people like you talking about healing, accessing our own inner wisdom and muse, I find tears and sadness and regret welling up. It's like there's one last barrier I haven't accessed. How can this course help me to climb this wall and see over to the other side?
I really hear you, and I just want to witness you and thank you for being here, and really honor you for all the work that you have done so far. And I would say that Alice Walker, the poet, says the way forward is with a broken heart. And I feel that when we have been hurt to this level, I don't know that it ever fully goes away. It gets integrated in different ways. We learn to live with it. Elizabeth Gilbert, the author, also talks about that. Like, she can't get rid of it all. They just kind of travel around with her, the tragedies, in a different way. And so what I'm wondering for you specifically is, have you brought the specific ways that you were hurt into the process at the level of really marking the canvas or marking the page? Like in the class, one of the free gifts is the colorful scars, where we're literally putting the scars in, and you're just really naming, this is how I feel. This is what happened, before we move into the catharsis of liberation, to just really acknowledge what happened. And I'm sure that you've done that in your different processes and therapeutic ways of working. There's something about the literalness of naming and marking how we're feeling now. So how it felt for you then is different than how it feels for you now. And so to mark it and then to state to it and to the grief and to the world, I am marking a transition now. I am now moving into another place I haven't been in before. And over here, my love and my self-expression is queen. And then you behave consistent with that transition. When the old stories come up again, you remind yourself, I've already crossed over that bridge. And then you once again go back to the canvas or go back to the page. So it's a continual process of showing up, acknowledging where you are, inviting yourself to move where you've been. And then I would also say, no matter how old you are, that it is never too late to start on some kind of creative project that fills your heart. My mom's 81. She's been teaching with me since her early 70s. And she thought, well, what can I do at this point? Oh my gosh, she learned so many things and is teaching so many things. She got motivated around creating. And so I wonder if there's a project in front of you that feels juicy and exciting that you could lean toward. And how this would help is that this is process, but it is also a little bit of intellect and a little bit of heart. And a lot of times those things are separated out in our creative process. But this really deals with how consciousness works, how to begin to change the brain pathways, bring it into the body, and bring it into the field. So there's a kind of a wholeness practice. And whether it will really move that stuck place for you or that hurt place, I don't know. But I know that my experience is that it can. And I invite you to give it a try. Most people who do this say they've never experienced anything like this, no matter what kind of stuff they've done, and you've never done it before like this. So I think time to invite your muse to tea.
Agreed.
And thank you. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Linda, for that question. And thank you, Shiloh, for that response. It was very, very beautiful. Looking at the clock, we are about out of time. But before we go, I'm going to draw the name in a drawing of a lucky person who will win free access to Shiloh's course. I have a random number generator here and a numbered list of names of people who entered by signing up for the reminder for this call, the email list. And I'll only be announcing the first name and the last initial for privacy purposes, and the winner will be notified by email. And the winner is number 8,513. A lot of people on that list. And the name is Sarah M. So, Sarah, you will be receiving an email and free entry to the course. Congratulations, Sarah. And Shiloh, wow, this has been really a fascinating conversation. I want to thank our viewers for being with us today and for all of your questions. Once again, the name of the course is The Dance of the Critic and the Muse, and it starts Thursday, February 14th. And once again, you can visit danceofcriticandmuse.com to learn more and to register. So before we cut you loose, Shiloh, do you have any final words for our viewers?
I just want to encourage all of you to know that you are a creative being and that creativity has nothing to do with talent or selling it or anyone else ever acknowledging it. You are a creative being living in a creation. And when you create, you tap into the power of creation. This is beyond your birthright. This is who you are. And so I encourage you, whether you decide to join us or not, of course, I hope that you will. But regardless, that you would ask yourself the question right now, in what way does my soul long to be self-expressed? And feel that feeling. And you could see the image. And from this moment, to take an action. Go do something. Take a trip to the art store. Sign up for the class. Get out a pen and paper. Open a book with a cup of tea. I really encourage you to do something at the completion right now, to go do something, to choose more self-expression. The pleasure, creativity, imagination, and originality is waiting for your yes. So are you willing to say yes?
Gorgeous words. Thank you again, Shiloh. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. You as well. And thank you, everyone, so much. It's a true honor to be in circle with you, and I look forward to being in circle with many of you when our class begins next week.
Exactly. Okay. Once again, thank you to everyone who joined us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well and look forward to having you on this course or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great day, everyone.